I'm Megan Miller, 32 years old, and nothing could have prepared me for what happened at that family reunion. It's funny how you think you know your family, how you think you're safe with them. But when my brother Derek slapped my 6-year-old daughter Lily across the face, that's when everything changed. And when I turned to my parents, they just stood there, doing nothing. They didn't step in. They didn't say a word. I used to believe that family would always have your back, that no matter what happened, they'd be your safety net. But what happens when your safety net is nothing more than a web of lies and betrayal? When the people you love most, the people you expect to protect you, turn their backs on you. Let me take you back a few years back when I was just another invisible member of the Sullivan family. My name might be Megan, but to them, I was just the girl who never quite lived up to the expectations. And to be honest, I had no idea how deep the betrayal ran until it hit me like a freight train. But before I go any further, if you think this story is going to mess with your head, hit that like button, comment your thoughts, and don't forget to subscribe. Trust me, you don't want to miss what comes next. "You're not welcome here," Derek spat at me, his words cutting through the quiet of the room like a knife. His eyes locked on me, but there was no warmth there, just the cold stare of someone who had already decided I wasn't worth their time. And when he turned his back, I had a choice to make. I could either stay silent or make a stand. But after everything I'd been through, everything they'd put me through, I wasn't about to let this slide. Not anymore. Growing up in Willow Creek, a small, quiet town in Pennsylvania, I was always the odd one out. My dad, James, ran a successful real estate company, and my mom, Beth, spent her time keeping up with the Joneses, always hosting parties, smiling through gritted teeth, and pretending everything was perfect. Meanwhile, I was stuck in the middle of their expectations, a child who could never quite meet the standard they set for me. And then there was Derek, the golden child, my older brother, the one who could do no wrong. Athletic, smart, charming, he had it all. And by the time we reached adulthood, I was still struggling to keep up. He was already a vice president at a real estate firm, living in a pristine house with his picture-perfect wife. Meanwhile, I was just trying to get by. I worked as a graphic designer, not exactly the career my family had hoped for me, but I loved it. The problem, they didn't love it. They didn't love me. Derek never let me forget that I wasn't the shining star of the Sullivan family. Every family gathering, every birthday dinner, he was there commanding attention, receiving praise, while I quietly faded into the background. I tried my best to keep the peace, but it was impossible to ignore the distance between us. And then there was Lily, my little girl, my pride and joy. She was the one person who made me feel like I had purpose, like I mattered. When I held her, I made a promise to myself that she would never feel the same way I did growing up. She would never feel small, invisible, or unworthy. But my promise to protect her was tested the moment we stepped into that reunion. That evening, everything felt off. I knew it in my bones. Derek had been a little more smug than usual. My mom had been acting distant, and my dad, well, he was always busy, lost in his world of deals and meetings. The night was supposed to be about family, but I felt like an outsider in my own home. It wasn't new, but tonight, it felt more suffocating than ever. And then it happened, the moment I'll never forget. Lily had been running around, her usual bubbly self. When she approached Derek, she was just saying hello, a sweet, innocent greeting, and before I could blink, he raised his hand and slapped her across the face. My stomach dropped. The room fell silent. I couldn't move. I couldn't breathe. It happened so fast. The slap echoed, the sound of it still ringing in my ears. Lily's face turned red, her eyes wide with confusion and hurt. I rushed to her side, my heart breaking. But when I looked up, no one was standing by me. My dad, my mom, they just stood there, watching. Not a word of defense, not a single action. They were silent, complicit. She needed to learn some respect, Derek said, like it was the most normal thing in the world. And that was the moment. The moment I realized my family wasn't just dysfunctional. They were toxic. I don't know what I was thinking. But something inside me snapped. I wasn't going to take this anymore. I wasn't going to let them treat me or my daughter like this. I had always tried to make things work with them, tried to fit into their perfect world. But they didn't care about me. They didn't care about us. As I stood there, comforting Lily, I made a vow to myself. I would make them see me. I would make them understand what they had done, not just to me, but to Lily. I would get revenge, but not in the way they were expecting. It wasn't going to be a screaming match or a confrontation. No, I would hit them where it hurt the most with the truth. I wasn't going to be their invisible little sister anymore. I was going to expose them for what they were. And this time, I wasn't going to let them sweep it under the rug. But first, I needed evidence. Something to make them listen. Something to make them feel the weight of their actions. I thought about the family video Paul had been filming. That's when it hit me. I could use it. I could use the very thing they thought would keep me in check to turn the tables. But there was a problem. The video didn't just have one embarrassing moment, it had everything. Derek's words, the slap, my family's indifference. It could destroy them. But would it be worth it? Was I prepared for what it would cost me? If you've ever felt like your family doesn't have your back, or if you've ever experienced betrayal, hit that like button, leave a comment, and make sure to subscribe for more. This story is just getting started. I walked out of that reunion with my heart pounding, feeling like I'd just been hit by a freight train. As I drove home with Lily in the back seat, my mind raced. I wanted to scream, but I couldn't. I needed to think, to plan. For so many years, I had tried to fit into that mold my family created, to be the good daughter, the one who was always there, the one who tried to get things right. But the truth was, I never really belonged in their world. Derek was the golden boy, and me, I was just the disappointment, always trying to catch up. Every single time I thought I had a chance, every time I made progress, they would knock me down. I could feel their disappointment in the air, heavy and suffocating. And now, this slapping my daughter in front of me. This was a line I would never let them cross again. Family history, the distance between us. Growing up in Willow Creek, I learned early on that the world didn't see me the way they saw Derek. They saw him as everything they wanted: successful, athletic, charming. He had their approval, their attention, and, I'll admit it, their love. I never felt like I had the same thing. I tried. I really did. But every time I spoke up or did something differently, it was met with disapproval. My dad, James Sullivan, a high-powered real estate mogul, was always working. He was a man who didn't have time for soft feelings, as he called them. If you weren't succeeding, you were wasting time. My mom, Beth, was no different. Her days were spent running our home and playing the perfect wife. I remember her telling me when I was little, "You're not like your brother, Megan. You need to work harder to get where you want to be." I wasn't blind. I could see how they compared me to Derek. Every achievement of his was celebrated. Every one of mine, no matter how hard I worked for it, was brushed aside. I could almost hear their voices in my head. Why can't you be more like Derek? The message was clear. I was never going to be good enough for them. And now, Lily. She was next in line to face the same fate. Derek's slap echoed in my mind like a gunshot. It wasn't just about the physical blow. It was everything: the years of undermining, the lack of respect, the silent agreement between my family that Derek was the crown jewel and I was nothing. The family's world of perfection. I can't say I didn't envy Derek's perfect life. He had the job, the money, the car, the house, everything my parents had always wanted for me. He already had. The kind of life they wanted for me but never acknowledged. His world was polished, pristine, just like my parents' vision for him. And me, I was the mess, the one who didn't fit into their clean little picture of success. But there was one thing I had that Derek didn't. My daughter, Lily. I think my parents saw her as a chance to redeem me. Maybe if they loved her enough, they'd fix what was broken between us. But they didn't understand. I wasn't broken. I wasn't some puzzle piece they could snap into place. And Lily, she wasn't some toy they could just mold into their version of perfection. She was a real person, not a project. That night, as I tucked Lily into bed, she looked at me with wide eyes, still shaken from what had happened. "Mom," she said, voice soft, "why did Uncle Derek hit me?" Her words cut deeper than anything Derek had said or done. I hugged her tightly, running my fingers through her hair, trying to soothe her. But my heart was a wreck. How was I supposed to explain this to her? How was I supposed to explain to my little girl that the people she loved, her family, didn't love her back in the way she deserved? I kissed her forehead and whispered, "It's not your fault, baby. None of this is your fault." But deep down, I knew I had to do something. I couldn't let this slide. I couldn't let her grow up thinking that this was just how it was. This wasn't just about me anymore. It was about her. My daughter deserved more than to be slapped around and ignored by the very people who were supposed to protect her. The plan takes shape. The next day, after everything had settled, I went into work mode. I was a graphic designer, so attention to detail was my thing. I had to think this through. This wasn't going to be some emotional outburst. It was time to get smart. I thought back to the family video Paul had been recording. He was always the quiet one, the one on the sidelines. He didn't have a stake in the family drama, and for that, I was grateful. He'd been filming everything: the dinner, the awkward silences, Derek's public outbursts, and, of course, his slap. I knew that video would be my ticket. It wasn't just going to show Derek's aggression. It was going to expose everything: the silent complicity of my parents. The way Derek always got away with things. It was the proof I needed. I needed that footage. And I wasn't going to waste any time getting it. But getting access to that video wouldn't be easy. Paul wasn't exactly the kind of guy who'd just hand over a recording like that. I couldn't risk him getting suspicious. So I began planning. I had to be smart. I had to outmaneuver my family, play the game by their rules, and then flip the table on them. The stakes and the risk. As I sat down that night, scrolling through the family photos on my phone, something clicked. I could feel the old patterns resurfacing: the shame, the anger, the years of trying to please them. But now I wasn't playing by their rules anymore. I was playing by mine. I began working on a plan, step by step. I knew I had to build my case. This wasn't just about Derek's slap, it was about everything that led up to it. I was going to expose the way they treated me. I was going to show them who they were, who they'd become. I wasn't going to let them ruin my daughter the way they'd ruined me. But here's the twist: getting the video wouldn't be as easy as I thought. Paul wasn't just going to hand it over, not without a reason. I had to find a way to make him trust me, to make him think I was still the same sister he had always known. I sat there for hours, my mind racing, the weight of what I was about to do heavy on my shoulders. This wasn't just about confronting my family. It was about taking back control of a life that had always been out of my hands. But there was something I wasn't prepared for. Paul had been more involved in the family drama than I realized. His own secrets were about to come to light. And when they did, everything would change. Stay tuned, because in the next part, the pieces of this game are about to fall into place. But the question is, Will I be ready for the consequences of the truth? It's strange how the universe works. You think you've been through the worst, only to realize the universe is just warming up. The slap. It wasn't the end. It wasn't even the worst thing that would happen. What came next would change everything. And the worst part, I didn't even know how far things were going to go until it was too late. In the days after the reunion, I didn't know what to do with myself. The house felt suffocating, like every room held the memory of Derek's words. That slap. The look of indifference on my parents' faces. I couldn't shake the image of Lily's shocked expression. The way she looked at me with those white, innocent eyes, asking, "Why did Uncle Derek hit me?" Every time I closed my eyes, it felt like the weight of that question hung over me like a dark cloud. How could I protect her from that? How could I stand by and let this happen again? The worst part, my parents didn't even ask. They didn't check in on me. They didn't apologize. Nothing. It was like the entire situation didn't even matter to them. They were just going to move on like it was no big deal. While I was left picking up the pieces, I spent hours staring at my phone, thinking of ways to contact Paul. How could I make him understand what was at stake? But as the days went on, something hit me. This was it. This was what it had always been. For years, I'd been fighting for validation from a family that would never truly see me. Derek. He didn't need to work for their approval. He already had it. The golden boy. The successful one. But I was just the background noise. The inconvenient truth they ignored. And here I was, again, looking for a way to make them see me, to make them feel the weight of what they had done. Not just to me, but to Lily. They hadn't just slapped her, they had slapped me too. And I wasn't going to let it slide. That night, as I sat in front of my laptop, something inside me snapped. I couldn't be passive anymore. I had to act. And I had to act now. Derek's world wasn't my world. It wasn't Lily's world. But it was still the world I had been forced to exist in. I thought back to that video Paul had filmed. What I had to do next was simple. Get the video. I needed it, not just for myself, but for Lily. I couldn't let Derek and my parents get away with this. Not this time. But getting to that video wasn't going to be easy. Paul wasn't a fool. He knew how these things worked. He was family. Yes. But he was also an outsider. And I had to figure out how to get to him, without him suspecting a thing. The thing was, he didn't know that this family was crumbling, and the price for keeping quiet was going to be much steeper than he realized. The next morning, I forced myself to get out of bed. I couldn't stay hidden in the shadows anymore. It was time to confront this. I made a call to Paul, and as the phone rang, I felt my heart race.
Hey, Paul? It's Megan. I said when he picked up, I need to ask you a favor.
Paul was a good guy, but he was also a man who understood family. The thing about family is, sometimes they keep secrets from each other. And I had a feeling Paul knew exactly what kind of secret I was asking for. "I'm listening," he said. "I need that video from the reunion," I replied, trying to sound casual. "The one you were filming. I think it might be useful for something, for a personal project." There was a pause on the other end of the line. I knew he wasn't buying it, but this was the moment I needed to push forward. "Why?" he asked, his voice tight. "I need to prove something," I said, the words flowing out before I could stop them. "Something about Derek. He hurt my daughter, Paul, and no one believes me. But I know the video will show everything." There was another pause, and I could almost feel the weight of his hesitation. He didn't want to get caught in the middle of this. He didn't want to betray anyone. But in the end, I knew he would. Everyone had a breaking point. "All right," Paul finally said, "but I need to make sure you understand what you're asking. This could turn everything upside down." "I understand," I said, swallowing the lump in my throat. I just need it, please. That evening, after hours of pacing and wondering if I had made a huge mistake, I received a message from Paul. He had it, the video. When I watched it, I felt my hands tremble. It was all there. Every word, every action. Derek's condescending smile when he slapped Lily. The look in my parents' eyes when they did nothing to stop it. And most damning of all, the way they treated me. But just as I was about to feel like I'd won, just as I thought I had everything I needed to turn the tables, another message came through. It was from Paul.
Megan, you need to watch the full footage.
What was I missing? I opened the full video, heart racing, and that's when I saw it. It wasn't just Derek. It wasn't just my parents. There, in the background, was a conversation I had missed. Paul had been recording the entire family dynamics, and buried deep in the footage was a conversation I had never expected. My mom, Beth, was talking about me. She didn't know she was being recorded, but her words hit me like a punch to the gut. She'll never get it. She said to my dad, "She's always been the one to disappoint us. I don't think she'll ever understand what it takes to really succeed." That's when I realized something even more terrifying than Derek's violence. It wasn't just Derek. It wasn't just my parents. My whole family had been against me from the start. I sat there, frozen, staring at the screen. This video wasn't just a tool for justice, it was my family's hidden truth. And now that I had it, I was about to use it against them. But the question still lingered. Was I ready to destroy everything for the sake of revenge? The next step wasn't going to be easy, and I could feel the weight of it crashing down on me. Stay tuned, because in part 4, I'm about to make the hardest decision of my life, and it might just destroy my family forever. The world felt like it was closing in on me. With each passing day, I could feel the weight of the secret growing heavier. I had the video. I had the proof. But there was one thing I couldn't escape. The looming question was, I ready to unleash the storm? The moment I saw my mother's words in that footage, the ones where she dismissed me like I was nothing more than a failure, something inside me snapped. It was like all the years of trying to fit into a family that never really wanted me came crashing down. The decision to act. I couldn't ignore it anymore. Not after what Derek had done. And certainly not after hearing my mother talk about me like I was a lost cause. The truth was, they were all complicit. Derek wasn't the only one who had failed me. It wasn't just the slap, it was everything. The silent disapproval. The years of being compared to Derek. The way they had all quietly accepted that I would never measure up. And I had enough. I wasn't going to let them get away with it. I had spent too many years sitting in the back seat of their perfect little life, invisible and desperate for validation. Now, I had the weapon I needed to expose them for what they were: a family full of lies, manipulation, and hidden bitterness. But as I sat there staring at my laptop screen, watching the video again, something hit me. This wasn't just about me anymore. It wasn't just about revenge. It was about justice. For Lily, who didn't deserve to be slapped by her uncle. For me, who had been slashed by years of emotional neglect. For every single moment I'd spent trying to earn their love, only to be knocked down again. It was time to take control. Building the strategy. The more I thought about it, the clearer the plan became. I couldn't just show up with the video and confront them. I needed to be smart about this, strategic. This wasn't a casual family argument. This was a full-on declaration of war. I had to get them where it would hurt the most. Not physically, but emotionally. Their reputation. The perfect image they had built for themselves. The life they paraded around. I was going to tear it all down with the truth. And to do that, I needed more than just the video. I needed to gather information. I had to make sure that no matter what, they couldn't escape the consequences of their actions. I had to be prepared for their reactions, and for what they would try to do to cover their tracks. The role of Paul. That's where Paul came in. I needed him to be my ally, but not in the obvious way. He was the key to breaking the facade, but getting him on my side wasn't going to be as easy as I hoped. I wasn't sure if he truly understood how deep the deception ran. He'd always been on the outskirts of the family drama, quiet and reserved. But this time, I needed him to act. He had the video, yes, but there was still more I could squeeze from him. I needed his help to push the story out. He was the one who could help me get the truth into the hands of the public where it belonged. But the problem was, Paul didn't know how deep the rabbit hole went. He didn't know that this family was more than just dysfunctional. He didn't know that Derek's slap wasn't the worst thing to happen. The worst was what was hidden beneath all the smiles and family dinners, the quiet resentment, the lies we all lived with for years. I needed to convince him that this was bigger than family drama. This was about exposing a toxic system, a system that had raised me to believe I wasn't good enough. And there was another twist I wasn't ready for. If I wanted to win, I had to be ready to break him too. Paul wasn't just the recorder in this story. He was part of the family's machine. If I wanted to tear it down, I might need to break him as well. Making the first move. The next few days were a blur. I worked quickly, compiling evidence, running through the video again, making notes on the timestamps of Derek's words, my parents' looks, and the way they just stood there. The silence was deafening. I scheduled a meeting with Paul. I had to meet him in person, over the phone. It was too easy to dodge the truth, too easy for him to hide behind excuses. I needed to look him in the eye. When the day came, I drove to his apartment, the nerves gnawing at me the entire way. I hadn't seen him in months, and I wasn't sure how this would go, but I couldn't back down now. I knocked on the door, my heart racing. He opened it, his eyes scanning my face, the tension thick in the air. "Megan, what's going on?" he asked. His voice was calm, but I could tell he was nervous. "I need your help," I said, pushing past the small talk. "I need you to help me expose the truth about our family. Derek, what he did to Lily, it wasn't an accident. He's been hurting us for years, and I can't stand by anymore. I have the video, and I'm going to use it to get justice for her. But I need you to help me take it public." He blinked, clearly taken aback. "You want to take this public, Megan? You're talking about tearing the whole family apart. This could destroy everything." "Exactly," I said, my voice firm. "But it needs to happen. You can't keep pretending this family is perfect. We're not. I'm done hiding behind their lies." The room was silent for a long moment, and I could feel the weight of the decision pressing on him. Finally, he nodded slowly. "All right, I'll help you. But Megan, you need to know something." "What?" "There's more to this story than just Derek. There's something in that video you don't know." My heart skipped a beat. What did he mean? What else was in the footage I hadn't seen? He looked at me, his face serious. "If you want to bring this out into the open, you need to be prepared. There's more than just Derek's violence. Trust me, it's going to get worse before it gets better." I froze, my mind racing. What could be worse than what I already knew? Stay tuned, because in part 5, I'm about to uncover secrets that will change everything. I felt the weight of the decision pressing on me harder than ever before. There was no turning back now. I had the evidence, the truth, and the plan, everything I needed to expose my family for what they really were. But even as the pieces fell into place, a lingering doubt gnawed at me. Was I ready for the fallout? Was I prepared to destroy the family I'd spent my whole life trying to please? I had spent so many years trying to fit in, to be the daughter they wanted, the sister they could be proud of. And now, for the first time in my life, I realized I didn't need their approval. I was going to take control for Lily, for myself, and for everyone who had ever felt like an outsider in their own family. The quiet before the storm. The next morning, after hours of staring at the footage and planning my next move, I finally felt ready. I wasn't just exposing Derek, I was exposing everything. The way my family treated me, the way they ignored Lily, and the way they thought they could get away with it all. I stared at my phone, my thumb hovering over Paul's contact. I had to do this. He was the key. He had the power to help me get the truth out there. But I also knew that what I was asking him to do wasn't small. He had no idea how deep the web of lies went, how tangled this whole family was. The first steps toward action, I decided to meet him again. I needed to make sure he was on the same page. This wasn't just about Derek. This was bigger than that. This was about making sure my daughter had a future where she wasn't judged by the sins of the past. I couldn't let her grow up in this toxic environment. When I met Paul later that day, I could tell he was still grappling with the weight of the video, the truth it held, and the consequences it would have. But I also knew he was starting to understand. He was finally seeing the cracks in the Sullivan family that had been there all along. "I've been thinking about it," Paul said, looking over the video again, his voice quieter than usual. "You're right. Derek can't keep getting away with this. But Megan, if we do this, it's going to cause a massive storm. Your parents won't let it slide. They'll fight back. You sure you're ready for that?" I could see the concern in his eyes. He was scared not for himself, but for me. But that wasn't going to stop me. I was done being scared. "I'm ready," I said, my voice steady. "We have the truth. Paul, we can't keep hiding from it. It's not just about me anymore. It's about everyone they've hurt. It's about what they did to Lily. It's time to make them pay." There was a long pause before Paul spoke again, his voice barely above a whisper. "All right, let's do this." The plan in motion. The next few days were a whirlwind of action. We were moving quickly, gathering everything we needed: copies of the video, screenshots of texts, anything that could prove the level of manipulation, the way my parents and Derek had treated me and Lily. But as we prepared to go public, something unexpected happened. The pressure. I could feel it building inside me, suffocating me. The moment I'd been dreading was closing in, and I couldn't stop thinking about what would happen once the truth came out. I knew there would be fallout, but I didn't realize how severe it would be. A dangerous game. The night before we were scheduled to release the video, I received a message from my mother. It was short, almost too casual, almost like nothing had ever happened. "We need to talk," it said. "Come by tomorrow. It's important." My stomach dropped. I knew what that meant. They knew. Derek must have figured out I had the footage. And now they were coming for me. I stared at the message for a long time, the silence in the room pressing down on me like a vice. This wasn't just a family meeting, it was a trap. I had a choice to make. I could go, face them head on, and risk them trying to convince me to keep quiet, to cover it all up. Or I could stay the course and release the video anyway, knowing full well that once the truth was out, there would be no going back. The moment of reckoning, I glanced over at Lily, sound asleep in her room. She was the reason I was doing this, the reason I was fighting so hard to make sure she never felt the way I did growing up. She deserved better than this toxic family. She deserved a life where she wasn't judged for being different. I wasn't about to let my fear hold me back. I was going to do this. I texted Paul, letting him know what was going on. "I'll still do it. I'm going to go. But I need you to be ready. We release the video tomorrow, no matter what." His reply came quickly. "I'm with you, but be careful." I stood up, taking one last look at the quiet house before I left. I was walking into the lion's den, but I wasn't going to back down. Confrontation. The next day, I arrived at my parents' house just as the sun began to set. The familiar gated driveway, the manicured lawn, it all felt so surreal. Like I was stepping into some twisted version of a family reunion that would never be the same again. When I walked inside, I could feel the tension immediately. Derek was there, sitting on the couch, looking as smug as ever. My parents were standing by the kitchen, their eyes heavy with something I couldn't quite place. "Sit down," my mom said, her tone icy but controlled. I did as she asked, my heart hammering in my chest. I wasn't sure what kind of game they were playing, but I knew this wouldn't end quietly. "Megan," my dad began, his voice firm, "we know what you're planning, and you need to stop. This is going too far. You're tearing this family apart." I stared at him, the words bitter on my tongue. Tearing the family apart. No. This was the family that had already been broken. I was just the one finally standing up and saying it out loud. "I'm not stopping," I said, my voice shaking but resolute. "This is not about you anymore. This is about what you've done to me, and what you've done to Lily. And I won't let you sweep it under the rug anymore." Derek's smirk faded, and for the first time, I saw fear in his eyes. He knew what was coming. Before I could say another word, the doorbell rang. I knew who it was. The storm had begun. The moment the door swung open, my stomach dropped. I hadn't been expecting it. Not like this. Standing in the doorway, looking at me like nothing had changed, was Aunt Linda. She hadn't been in the picture for years. And yet, there she was. Her presence a heavy reminder of how deep the betrayal ran. "Linda," I barely whispered, taken aback by her sudden appearance. She smiled, but it wasn't warm. It was that fake smile. The one that made me uncomfortable even as a child. The smile that told you everything was fine, even though you knew it wasn't. "I think we need to talk," she said, stepping into the house without waiting for an invitation. The chill in the air grew colder as she crossed the threshold, her heels clicking on the polished floor like a metronome ticking down to something inevitable. I stood frozen in place, my mind spinning. Why was she here? She was family, yes, but she hadn't been part of our lives for so long. The last time I'd seen her was years ago, and it hadn't ended on a good note. The past, coming back to haunt Linda, had always been a part of the background. One of those people who would show up at family gatherings with her judgmental glances and subtle criticisms. She didn't have the power that my parents or Derek did, but she still had a way of making me feel like I wasn't enough. She was the type who never missed a chance to remind me how I didn't measure up, a reminder I didn't need, but one I received anyway. "What are you doing here?" I finally found my voice. I didn't want to let her in, but I didn't have a choice. She didn't answer right away. Instead, she glanced over at Derek, who was now standing with a tight smile on his face, and my parents, who were both stone-faced, watching me carefully. They'd all known she was coming. I could see it in their eyes. This was part of their plan. This was part of the trap they were setting for me. "I was just checking in," Linda said, her tone saccharine. "Family is important, after all." She said it like a line she had rehearsed. She knew the rules of the game better than anyone. I wanted to scream, but I didn't. I couldn't afford to lose my cool now. I had come too far. I had the video, the evidence. The truth was in my hands, and there was no way I was going to let them spin this. "I've already heard the speech. Linda?" "What do you want?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. Linda's smile faltered for a second, and for the briefest of moments, I saw something like fear in her eyes. This wasn't the first time she'd seen the cracks in this family. She had always known. "I'm here to help," she said. Her words were slow, carefully chosen, and her eyes flickered nervously to my parents before landing back on me. It wasn't help she wanted, it was control. The game changes. And just like that, I knew I had made a mistake by letting her in. This wasn't a reunion. This wasn't a family coming together to talk. This was a maneuver, a strategic move, a way for them to regain control. Linda was here to talk me out of it, to convince me to back off, to stay silent.
You don't have to do this, Megan, she continued, her voice soft, like she was trying to lull me into a sense of comfort. This family is falling apart. Yes, but tearing it apart even more won't fix anything. You don't want to go public with this. It will ruin everything. It will ruin you. For a moment, I felt my heart skip a beat. Would I really destroy my family? Then I remembered Lily. No, I wasn't doing this for me. I was doing this for her. Twist's secrets are revealed. As if on cue, my dad finally spoke, his voice gruff. You've made your choice. Megan, you've decided to destroy this family, and there's no going back from that. I just hope you understand the consequences. I stared at him, his words like daggers. This was what they had been building up to. This was the moment they thought I would back down. But I wasn't backing down. I was ready. Ready for the fight. Ready for the truth to come out. But then something unexpected happened. Linda stepped forward, her voice dropping to a whisper. There's something you don't know, Megan. Something you haven't seen. Her eyes locked onto mine, her gaze colder than I remembered. It's not just Derek. It's not just your parents. There's more to this family than you ever realized. My pulse quickened. What was she talking about? What had she been hiding? I don't know what you're talking about, I said, trying to play it cool, but I could feel the shift in the room. Everyone was holding their breath. Linda looked around at the others, then leaned in closer. Your mother. She didn't just ignore what happened to you. She encouraged it. She didn't think you were good enough for this family. Not then. Not now. The weight of the truth. Her words hit me like a physical blow. My mother. The woman who had always been my rock. The one who told me to be strong and push through. She was the one behind it all. Everything I had believed, everything I had told myself about my family, was suddenly crumbling in front of me. How could this be? Why would she do this? Linda straightened up, her eyes flashing with a mixture of satisfaction and something else, something darker. I'm telling you this because you need to know what you're really up against. You're not just going after Derek. You're going after everything, and there are people who won't let you destroy it. The trap is set. My mother's face had gone pale. She stepped forward, her voice trembling for the first time in years. Linda, stop. You don't know what you're saying. Don't listen to her. Megan, she's just trying to make you doubt yourself. But the damage was done. The seed of doubt had been planted. And it wasn't just about Derek anymore. It was about my whole family and how they had been playing me, all of us. I wasn't just fighting Derek anymore. I was fighting the whole damn system. Don't you see? Megan Linda whispered, her eyes locking onto mine, as if she were daring me to turn away. The truth is worse than anything you've imagined. And now that you know it, you're in it, you're part of it. The silence that followed the ring of the doorbell was deafening. I stood frozen in the middle of the living room, my heart hammering against my chest. What was this? Who else could possibly be here? I already had enough to deal with Linda's betrayal, the family's lies, and the heavy truth that had been dumped in my lap. I felt the cold sweat on the back of my neck as I turned toward the door, my hands clammy with tension. I was about to confront my entire family. But this was different. This wasn't just a family meeting. This was the final showdown. The door creaked open, and I almost couldn't believe my eyes. Standing in the doorway was someone I never expected to see again, Aunt Linda's son, my cousin Tommy. I hadn't seen him in over a decade. He was the kid I used to play with in the backyard, the one who always tried to make things better when my parents would argue. But something had changed. I could see it in his eyes.
He wasn't the kid I remembered. He was a man now, and the weight of the world seemed to be on his shoulders. He looked at me, his face conflicted. For a second, I thought he might walk away, but instead, he stepped inside. He didn't speak, didn't say a word. He just looked at me as if he knew exactly what was going on. The unexpected ally, Megan, he finally said, his voice soft, almost apologetic. I need to talk to you. It's important. I could feel my pulse quicken. Why now? Why, after all this time, the family I had known was falling apart at the seams. And now, here he was, walking into the middle of it, like he was somehow going to fix it. "Tommy, what is it? What's going on?" I asked, my voice trembling. I had no idea what to expect from him, but after everything that had happened with Linda, Derek, and my parents, I couldn't afford to be caught off guard again. He looked at me with a troubled expression, his eyes darting between me and the rest of the family who had gathered in the room. Derek was still sitting stiffly on the couch, his hands folded tightly in his lap, while my parents stood by, pretending to look concerned, but barely masking their guilt. Tommy took a deep breath, his eyes locking with mine. "Megan, I know you're angry. Hell, we all are. But there's something you need to know. Something about this whole situation." I felt a cold chill run down my spine. This was it. This was the moment I'd been waiting for. The truth was about to be laid bare. "Go on," I said, my voice barely a whisper. The final twist. Tommy walked closer, lowering his voice to a near hush. "It's not just Derek, Megan. It's not just your parents. This whole family. They've been covering up a lot more than you think. There's much more behind all of this than you know." My heart skipped a beat. I had already heard too much. I thought I had already pieced together the story. But now, Tommy was telling me that it wasn't just about Derek's actions, it was about everything. The entire family's secrets. Everything that had been hidden from me. Hidden from the world. "Tommy, just tell me," I demanded. "What are you talking about? What's really going on?" He hesitated for a moment, his eyes flickering nervously. Finally, he spoke. "It's your mom, Megan. She didn't just let Derek hurt you. She helped him. She's been pulling the strings in this family for years. She manipulated everything. She's been controlling what everyone thinks about you. All of this, the lies, the distance, the hatred, it was her doing." My chest tightened, and I could feel the world spinning around me. My own mother, the woman who had raised me, who had always told me to stay strong, to keep fighting for the family, she was the one behind it all. I didn't know how to process what Tommy was saying. My mind raced. Could this really be true? Before I could respond, Tommy continued, his voice breaking with the weight of his words. I didn't know how deep it went until recently. I didn't understand how far she would go to keep her control over all of us. But now I see the full picture. She used Derek to keep you in line. She used him to break you. The shocking revelation, I couldn't breathe. This wasn't just a family feud. This wasn't just some petty argument that had spiraled out of control. This was manipulation on a level I couldn't have imagined. My mother had turned my life into a game, using me as a pawn, forcing me into submission with her silent cruelty. I was finally understanding everything that had been happening in this family. The way my success had been minimized. The way my every move was scrutinized. And the way I was made to feel small and insignificant. It had all been orchestrated by her. I had thought it was just her trying to be a good mom, trying to guide me in the right direction. But the truth was much uglier. Tommy looked at me, his eyes full of regret. "I should have told you sooner, Megan. But I was scared of what she'd do to me if I said anything." I couldn't speak. The reality of what he had just told me was too much to handle. My own mother, the person I had trusted most in this world, had been playing me all along. But the worst part, she wasn't just playing me. She was playing all of us. The choice. My hands shook as I looked around at my family. They were all there, pretending like everything was fine, trying to hold on to the fragile illusion that nothing was wrong. But now, the truth was spilling out. The lies couldn't be kept anymore. Derek's face was pale. He looked guilty. For the first time, he wasn't the golden boy. And my parents, they stood there, silent, unable to make eye contact. The web had unraveled, and they were all tangled in it. But there was one final choice left. I had the truth. I had the power to expose everything. But was I ready for what would happen next? Was I ready to destroy the last remnants of my family? Knowing I could never put it back together again. If you're on the edge of your seat, don't go anywhere. Like if you're shocked by what just happened. Comment if you've ever had to face betrayal from someone you loved. And make sure to subscribe so you don't miss what happens next. The truth is coming, and it's going to be worse than anything we've seen so far. The doorbell rang again. My head spun. Who was this now? The family was already in chaos. Tommy's revelations about my mother's manipulation, the cracks that had started showing in Derek's perfect life, and my parents' guilt-laden silence. I was ready to confront all of it. But this was something I wasn't prepared for. For a moment, no one moved. The room was frozen in that terrible silence, as if the universe had hit the pause button on my family's unraveling. And then, the door opened. I stood there, staring in disbelief as Lily's father, my ex-husband Ben, stepped into the room. I hadn't seen Ben in over 2 years. After our messy divorce, I thought I'd never hear from him again. Yet here he was, his presence like a jolt of electricity running through the room. The unexpected twist, Ben's eyes scanned the room, taking in the tense atmosphere. The family, still reeling from Tommy's words, looked at him with a mixture of confusion and shock. He was an outsider now, but somehow, in this moment, he had become a key player in my drama. "Megan," Ben said, his voice low, measured but firm. He didn't even glance at my parents or Derek. He didn't need to. He knew what this family had done to me. He knew the pain they'd caused. I could feel the weight of the room shift, the tension ratcheting up. "What are you doing here?" Ben, I asked, my voice barely above a whisper, the shock of seeing him mixing with the anger already boiling in my blood.
"I'm here because I know what's going on," he said simply. "I know about the video. I know about everything that's been happening."
His words struck me like a slap to the face, and I could feel the blood draining from my face. How did he know? "You were always a part of this, Megan," Ben continued, his gaze meeting mine with something new, sincere concern. "I didn't know how to protect Lily from this family, from the mess you were dealing with. I was too caught up in my own problems. But now I see that it's worse than I thought." I glanced at Tommy. Was this some kind of sick joke, Ben? Of all people, Ben. He had been one of the reasons I left my past behind, yet now he was here ready to help. The confrontation and the truth. I looked at Ben, my eyes narrowing. "What do you mean? Worse than you thought? What's really going on, Ben?" Ben took a deep breath and stepped further into the room, his presence forcing the family to recognize him. It was like he was an anchor in this storm. But I wasn't sure if he was here to save me or drown us all. "The family's been hiding things, Megan," Ben said, his voice steady but full of the weight of years of secrets. "I've been talking to some people from the old days. Your mother's been keeping more from you than you realize. It's not just about you or Lily. It's about everyone. The way they manipulated you, and the way Derek's been covering up more than just his violence." I felt my chest tighten. What was he saying? "You're not the first person to be hurt by this family's secrets, Megan," Ben continued, his eyes now on my parents. My mother flinched, and Derek shifted uncomfortably. I'm sorry I wasn't there for you. But now, I can't just stand by and watch it all fall apart without doing something about it. I felt a mixture of disbelief and anger surge within me. Ben, my ex-husband, the man who walked away from our family just when I needed him the most. He was here, in my parents' house, ready to help me expose the truth. But there was something else. A nagging suspicion gnawed at me, something in the pit of my stomach. Why was he here? Why now? The breaking point. And just as I thought I couldn't feel any more betrayed or confused, Ben did the one thing I wasn't expecting. He pulled out a folder from his jacket and placed it on the table in front of me. "Take a look at this," he said, his voice low. "I think it's time you finally knew what your mother and Derek were hiding. The things they didn't want you to see." My hands trembled as I reached for the folder. As I opened it, I found page after page of bank statements, documents, and hidden records. And the most disturbing part, they all connected to a trust fund, a fund set up by my parents for my future, which I never knew existed. But here's the kicker, they had been siphoning money from it for years. My parents had been taking money out of my trust fund, using it to pay off debts, hiding their mistakes, and keeping up their image. They hadn't just abandoned me emotionally. They had stolen from me too. I couldn't breathe. This wasn't just about betrayal, it was about theft, about everything I'd ever been told about family being a lie. I looked up at Ben, my eyes wide with shock and rage. "Why didn't you tell me sooner?" My voice was hoarse, barely audible. "Why did you wait until now?" I didn't know how deep it went. "Megan," Ben said quietly, "I just thought you needed to know. All of it." I could feel the ground shifting beneath my feet. Everything I thought I knew, everything I thought was real, was crumbling. But there was no time to wallow in disbelief. There was no time to hesitate. The truth was right there in front of me, and there was no escaping it. But just as I was about to make a choice, just as I was about to decide whether I was going to confront my family or go public with the truth, a phone call came through. It was from a lawyer. "Are you ready for the next step?" the voice on the other end asked, calm and direct. I took a deep breath, knowing this call would change everything. This was it, the moment I had been waiting for. Stay tuned. Like if you're shocked by all the secrets that have been revealed. Comment if you've ever had to deal with family betrayal. And subscribe because you do not want to miss the shocking conclusion. The storm is coming, and you won't believe what happens next. If you've been hooked by every twist and turn in this story, hit that like button because trust me, the real battle is just beginning. Comment below with your thoughts. How would you handle being in Megan's shoes? Would you expose everything? Or would you try to keep your family together? And don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss the final part of this wild ride. The truth is coming, and it's going to hit harder than ever. Stay tuned. This story isn't over yet.